the problems that we had with Sound and Contact were they were few, but they were severe. And in a strange way, we were powerless against them. Um, I wish I could go into greater detail, but we need to you know, keep our dirty laundry where it belongs. What I learned, to answer your question, I think, is to have a gentler approach to band members and their different sensibilities. I can be kind of, I don't want to say I'm a hard ass, but I do have expectations. And if they're not met, I do get grumpy.
This is Rob Ruckus.
Hey, this is Kate Clover.
Hey guys, it's Nick Collins here from The Effect and Better Strangers.
Hi, my name's Madeline Rose.
Hey, it's Ben McKelvey.
It's Tim Howard here from Mike and the Mechanics.
Hello, I'm Amanda Lehman.
I'm Billy Harvey.
What's going on, everybody? I'm Casey Sampson from the band Twist Stop.
Hey, it's Tony from Fastball.
Hello, everybody. My name is Isaiah Mitchell.
Hey guys, it's Matt here from the White Lakes.
You're listening to Almost Famous Magazine.
Come join us for this interview. Check it out, Almost Famous Magazine.
Hey everybody, welcome back to The Hang right here on Almost Famous Magazine. We truly appreciate you coming back to learn about the artists that we get the chance to hang out with, learn a little bit, hopefully provide you some insight, and really kind of, just get to know people out there in the music and the art world. And today is no different. Today, I'm going to be hanging with Matt Dorsey. Now, Matt is, first of all, he's super cool. So you're going to get to know him today. But he's a multi-instrumentalist. He's a singer. He's a songwriter. You may know of him, especially like in prog circles with like Sound of Contact, In Continuum, the Dave Kerzner band, Circuline, and then his last project before going solo, actually called Project. It was a prog cover tribute act. So now he's about a year or so out of that, and his solo album "Let Go" came out about a year ago. So we're just gonna hang and chat about it today, and get you to get everybody to know about it. So Matt, welcome to The Hang. This is gonna be fun. You've had an opportunity to work with a lot of great musicians, a lot of great influence in your career. Your solo album is tremendous and top on my list. So we're going to chat about that, and we'll see where things take us today. So, I always like to start at the beginning, and I know from doing some research, I think you had a little music in your home that got you going. Talk about that story, and then what was the impetus for you to pick up an instrument and say, "This is for me"?
I started playing bass when I was 15 years old. And the reason I did that was my older brother, had been playing drums for a few years. My dad's a piano player, so he would be playing the jazz standards like every single night as we went to bed. So that was just, a constant. So my brother was playing drums for a while. I'm 14 years old, and my younger brother gets a guitar for Christmas. And so we've got piano, drums, and guitar. And I'm like, hey, my birthday's in January. Hey, Pops. All we need is a bass, and we got a whole band. And I remember he was like, "You sure you want to play bass? I mean, you don't want to play guitar, you want to play?" So I ran upstairs and I took my sister's guitar. She wasn't really playing. She just had this old acoustic guitar from a friend of hers. It didn't even have all the strings on it. And I tried to figure out the bass line to Message in a Bottle. The Police, huge influence. One of my favorite bands growing up. I remember there was probably 2 or 3 years where there was nothing but one of the Police cassettes in my Walkman. That's right, I am that old. Anyway, so I learned it, and I went back downstairs, and I said, Dad, I can do it. And he's like, okay, let's do it. So on my 15th birthday, he brought me to Daddy's Junkie Music Store in Salem, New Hampshire, and he bought me my first bass and amplifier, and man, changed everything. Really did.
I can imagine. Is that store still around?
Is what?
Is that store still around?
It's not, I don't think. No. I think it went out of business probably a decade or so ago. But I don't know the story. I just remember that was the place we went to for all of our music needs. Daddy's Junkie Music Store. It's a great store.
You know, with the closing of Sam Ash recently, I mean, it's kind of melancholy a little bit. I remember, growing up in Rochester, New York, you had the House of Guitars, and like just like a record store, a music store had that smell and that feel to it. Yep. Kind of miss that experience.
There was an atmospheric difference between outside and inside. There's no doubt. You just felt like you're in a different world. Just remember the walls of guitars and the rooms of keyboards, and oh my God, I used to love going there. I'd be happy if I left there with a pick from the counter, right? So I started playing bass. My younger brother never really took to the guitar, so I started playing that. I started tinkling around with the piano and with the drums. And within a couple of years, I was just kind of putting songs together, on my own. And that ended up being my favorite thing in the world to do, right? I used to be athletic. I used to be in sports and everything. As soon as I started playing music, like everything else, I just didn't really care as much anymore. Of course, I didn't care about schoolwork to begin with. So that wasn't much of a hurdle. But I got lost in it, just making sounds that I love. It was just the best. I had a little studio set up in my family's attic, in the basement, bedrooms. I've just had a studio, a little project studio, wherever I've lived ever since. And finally, the house that my wife and I bought about 6 years ago, I converted most of the garage, about 75% of the garage, into this project studio. And this has been, the place I've been dreaming of all of those years.
No, that's great. But talk about that feeling that you had back then when you were creating this. Like, what did it feel like to you to be able to take little pieces, little sounds, and put it all together? Like, what was that experience?
It was exciting. When I first started noodling with the guitar, I remember coming up with like this cool little idea. And I remember thinking, am I ever going to be able to write a song? Right? I mean, I got this cool little riff, but that's not a song. But I kept at it, added a couple of different pieces, little parts to it. And before long, I had a verse and a chorus section that sounded nice going back and forth. And man, did I get excited. Man, I was like, oh God, this feels great. This is so fun. Right? And then I started adding layers, right? Adding guitar and bass and some like string pads and stuff like that. And I was just out of my mind. I was like, I can't believe how fun this is. This is just, it's an opportunity to plug in to ecstasy for a while, right? You can just leave the world behind, put on your headphones, and suddenly you're in this magical world of sonic emotion. And it's blissful. It's really blissful. And it hasn't changed. I still feel that way. I mean, I'll come into the studio, 10 o'clock at night, and it'll be 2 o'clock before I realize I'm still at it and I got to go to bed. It's blissful. If anybody out there is thinking about picking up an instrument, man, just do it. It's the best hobby in the world. It's the best. Don't plan on making any money because you probably won't. But it's the best hobby in the world. It's so fulfilling. It's the best.
Yeah, it's probably up there with like the best therapy, right? Like an opportunity to open your mind, be free, take risks.
Yep.
And not worry about the outcome because you're creating it. You're throwing, it's your own color palette.
Exactly. Yeah, well put. Yeah. Something really exciting about coming up with an idea that you don't think anyone else has ever come up with, something sort of original. And, there's nothing new under the sun. And, we're rock musicians. We're the bottom of the totem pole as far as, real musicianship. So I don't pretend that what I've written is great or original. But, in the moment, you're like, man, this is a cool idea. It's just so thrilling. It's so thrilling. I love it.
It's interesting you mentioned that because, I mean, between my photography and video making and things that I do, it's always been an odd thing that the stuff that I create that I love the most.
Yeah.
Right. People are like, nah, whatever. the stuff that I think is trash, people love. I've
weird,
never
isn't
understood. It's a very weird thing, yeah.
Yeah, you can't account for taste.
No, you definitely can't. You definitely can't. So you're at home, you're making music, and you're up in the Boston area, Northeast area, and you're creating this music, and then you end up in Dallas, Texas, to study philosophy.
That's
Was
right.
that Plan B or Plan A?
That kind of emerged out of nowhere, honestly. I wasn't planning on going to college. Like I said, I wasn't a very good student. It's funny. The only time I would never clean my room if it weren't for homework. You know what I mean? I just hated homework. So I would think of anything to do other than that. So I wasn't really planning on going to college. It was 3 years out of high school. And I'm playing in this band that, I joined when I was in high school. So we've been at it for a few years when it just started to occur to me that maybe I should go study. I should go to school. I definitely didn't want to change the plan of being a musician for the rest of my life, but I felt like, if I'm going to sing about the world, I should probably know a little bit about it. And so I started applying to colleges without anybody knowing. And I got into one. And
that's the one I went to.
University of Dallas. And, I don't want you to think that they just accept anybody because they're a great school and they're very competitive. But I, for some reason, very late in the admissions process, I think I just sort of sneaked in through. They thought I was going to be a full pay, right? And then I got there and I applied for financial aid. So I think they were like, "Oh shit!" But I got the best education out of it. I mean, everyone says they got the best. It's philosophy. Philosophy is everywhere in that curriculum, right? When I sent away to the college, I got a pamphlet and it says truth and virtue exist. Like that's what it says on the front of their pamphlet. Oh, really? Well, this is interesting. Open it up and it says, and are the primary goal of a proper education. Truth and virtue exist. Like no other literature was talking about that. It just came right out and said, look, man, capital T, truth. It is a thing and it's something that we should, strive to understand. And that was right up my alley at the time. So I went there. I had 4 years of just, it was great. I never became a great student, but I learned a great deal. I really did.
It's interesting. I mean, over the last, 6 years or so, there's been that big question out there about, is a college education worth it, right? And I think that when you look at the big picture, you don't have to be the best student. How do you become someone who can really work with others, really learn to collaborate, and then use your mind to learn the things you need to do to end up with that outcome? And if you can do that, A, B, C, or D doesn't necessarily matter because those are the skills that are going to take you out in life, right?
Right. It's all about learning, right? And it's not necessarily about what you learn in the classroom. It's what you learn and, what enriches your life and what you can take forward for the rest of your life as lessons. So college isn't for everybody, but it certainly is for a lot of people. And it's a great place to, as you pointed out, just learn all this other stuff about life, about interacting with other human beings, about planning. It's all important stuff. I never learned it, but.
Well, let me ask you this: then, how did studying philosophy impact you as a musician?
That's an interesting question. I don't know how I could say, I don't know how I would articulate a causal relationship between my studies and my music, except to say, everything that we do does sort of inform who we are. I'm sure that I wrote different, I don't want to say more profound because that sounds snobbish. But yeah, like a bit more sophisticated music after 4 years of studying philosophy, for sure. For better or worse, You write a simple song and you're a millionaire, right? You write something complicated, nobody's ever heard it. So I don't know. It changed me as an individual, and so naturally it changed the way I approach music. But I don't know how I could articulate that other than to say, studying philosophy opens your mind.
Well, wasn't it your wasn't kind of though that period shortly after that period like the genesis of you started to write, and years later didn't some of that end up on your Let Go album?
Yeah, actually, one of the songs on the album I wrote right after college. I think it was 95. Yeah, so I mean, and that song I wrote right after, I was really thinking about philosophy, and like if you listen to that song, it's kind of a bird's eye view of humanity, right, as a whole, and that's just a perspective I just didn't have before college. So fresh off of 4 years of study, I wrote that song, and it just stuck with me, and I always felt like it could be, if not a hit, at least have some impact. So I'm glad. Very glad that it's finally seen the light of day. It almost went on the first Sound of Contact album. It's actually the first song Sound of Contact recorded in our first recording session.
Really?
We did Man and Waiting for the Fall, both of which ended up on my solo record because they didn't end up on Dimension, which is fine. Dimension is what it is, and it's awesome, and I love it. But we did those two songs, and then one song that Simon had brought in that ended up on not his latest solo record, I think the one right before it. So, it all overlaps.
Wow. I mean, just imagine. I mean, you're right. Yes, the Sound of Contact album, it stands the test of time. I mean,
I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it at all. Like Dave Kerzner and Simon both put in so much amazing magic into that album. I'm just happy I was part of it, playing guitar, playing bass. I'm still shocked by the responses that we see online of people, raving about this album that's over 10 years old. It's bittersweet because of the way Sound of Contact sort of dissolved, and we only ended up with one record. But what a record, I wouldn't trade it.
Well, I think the albums that can stand the test of time and become timeless end up being some of our favorite, right? And there were albums made in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s where you wouldn't say, okay, that was made in that specific time. And I think Sound of Contact is one of those that's going to, 30 or 40 years from now, is going to sound like it was made today in that time, as opposed to, back then. It's the sound. It's got a flavor to it, right? And I think that, people will have a difficulty putting a timestamp on when it actually was created. And I think that's
cool. Yeah, I like that.
See, Man almost ended up there, right?
Yeah.
One of the songs that I absolutely love on the album is Echo.
Oh, right on.
And I don't know if spending 4 years in Texas helped create that vibe. It's really interesting because your album came out about a year and a half ago, I think.
Yep. April of last year.
And just this year, Trevor Rabin put out his, I think, second solo album. I mean, It only took him about 20 years. And he has this song Oklahoma. And when I heard Oklahoma, and then I'm like, they have this, they both have this standout feeling because you're not necessarily country artists or Americana artists.
Right. Yeah, I'll have to listen to that song. I don't think I've heard it. But yeah, that does have a kind of a country feel to it for sure. Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, I don't really write a song. I don't sit down to write a specific type of song. I just kind of sit down and whatever, whether it's guitar or keyboards. I just sort of hammer out ideas until it develops into something, recognizable in terms of style, right? Never know what I'm writing till it emerges. It's like, oh, this sounds kind of country. And then all of a sudden, writing a country song. Oh, this sounds folky. You know what I mean? Oh, this riff rocks. This is going to be a fucking rocker. But it's just whatever happens, whatever falls out at the time.
I think that's a great skill though, because I think some musicians are they either choose to stay in their lane, right?
Right.
Because it's how they made their bread and butter.
Sure.
Or they don't have the musicianship to change lanes, right? And I've noticed lately, and I'm kind of interested in your take on this. There seems to be a lot of genre fusion and blurring the lines these days, right? I mean, you look at what Beyonce and Post Malone have recently done, right? Gone from where kind of their safe spot into country, and I'm wondering, do you think that a lot of that, because there are a number of artists doing it these days, is out of a desire to really branch out into other genres, or in the marketplace that we have that's so fragmented, they're doing it because you're running out of audience. How do you pull in new audience? What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know if I have any insight there. It's probably, massive success as a musician is a world I'm not familiar with, right? So I don't know why they do what they do. I would like to think, and this is certainly very naive, but I would like to think people will write an album of country music because they have it in them, right? Not because they want to make money, not because they want those fans. It's because, oh, wow, I just wrote a country song. This feels good, right? Why don't we do another one? Why don't we do a whole album, right? But I have no idea why people do what they do.
It's interesting because Post Malone, I'm just kind of surprised that wasn't where he went first, considering he grew up, where is it, not far from here in Grapevine.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. He was born, I think, around the Syracuse, New York area, and ended up in Grapevine. So he's kind of a Dallas boy. So it's kind of interesting. I just think it's interesting. Is it out of joy for creating something different, or out of some necessity? Because the music business has changed so dramatically, and there really is there's kind of finite audiences out there because there's so much saturation of content. Yeah. What do you do to find your audience?
I don't know, man. Listen, again, I'm not one to give advice because it's not like I've got a great deal of success to point to. But what I could say is what I've heard other people say is just write what you love, write what is meaningful to you. Stay true to your art. If it catches, bonus, right? Bonus. But don't chase it, because then you're kind of, it's contrived. It's impure.
I think you've had some successes. I think it doesn't necessarily have to be a dollar success, but I think going back to Sound of Contact.
Generally speaking, I'm not a rich rock star. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no.
I know that there are musicians who would die to be in a situation like Sound of Contact. I get that for sure, and I genuinely appreciate that opportunity. But I'm not pretending to be a rock star.
One day, there's always tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm not saying
that. Now, speaking of Sound of Contact, because you have had some other great musical opportunities that we'll get to, but I'm always interested when something doesn't work out. I think we learn more from our failures and our successes, right? Sometimes we have a success, we reach the top of the mountain, we're like, we got here, we did it. What's something that, in the process of learning through, Sound of Contact, did you kind of take away from that experience that you said, okay, I've learned something here that I can take into my future musical experiences?
Well, not to get into great detail, the problems that we had with Sound of Contact were few, but they were severe. And in a strange way, we were powerless against them. I wish I could go into greater detail, but we need to keep our dirty laundry where it belongs. What I learned, to answer your question, I think, is to have a gentler approach to band members and their different sensibilities. I can be kind of, I don't want to say I'm a hard ass, but I do have expectations, and if they're not met, I do get grumpy. And I know for a fact that rubs people the wrong way. And so moving forward, I need to keep a lid on that. That was one of the problems I think I had with Project. I was in that band from the very beginning. I was the very first bass player. And I did all the rehearsals. I was playing bass and keyboards and guitar and singing background vocals and lead, getting us through 3 years of rehearsals, only to be booted out of the band after the first tour. And even though I'm still not sure what happened, I know it's because, at least to some degree, I was irritating somebody. I didn't realize it, but I can be cranky. And, I would let things spill over, where I shouldn't have. And I would wager that was a large part of the reason I was kicked out of the band. So, yeah, a tough lesson for sure, because I loved playing with those guys. Loved it. Have a blast on that tour. I mean, they're all great musicians and funny individuals. I wish them all the best. They're great, great guys. But I just had this one conflict with one of the guys, and it just ended it.
Well, I think that's a great lesson in a way that you can take that lesson and transport it into other things in life, right? Mm-hmm. Whether you're in a band or you're in business.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
And I totally understand. Look, I set very high expectations for myself, and the fallacy of life is expecting other people to rise to your expectations.
Right.
And especially even more, I think, in business it's one thing, but you get pretty passionately heated in art, right? It's true. Because the vision is up here. And,
right. And what? Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead and finish.
Well, no, I just think it's a great it's a great life lesson. Sometimes the byproduct sucks,
right?
Because you lose something that you love, but at the same time, you learn how to better deal with it the next time and the next time and the next time, and there'll never be a perfect scenario. Right. You get better each time.
Right. Right. We're pebbles getting thrown down the river, and we kind of get polished along the way, right?
That is a great analogy there. Absolutely. But you have had a great experience. I mean, project may not have ended well. Sonic Contact may not have ended well, and have ended. But you have relationships out of that where you ended up going from Sound of Contact to In Continuum, which is also in and of itself amazing music.
Totally, yeah. Thanks to Dave Kerzner, who had all of these songs he was planning on putting on, the second or third Sound of Contact record. So he needed a home for all those compositions. And that's why it's called In Continuum. It's kind of a continuation of specifically Dave's contribution to that band. And you can definitely hear the influences for sure. And got to play with a lot of great guys in that project. Marco Miniman, insane drummer. And if it weren't for that, I wouldn't have had him on my album. So, yeah, good stuff. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. If you follow Dave, anyone watching follows Dave, I would say on the outside, when he works on these projects that he has, you want to talk about perfectionist. Because he catalogs his experience. He'll take the recordings out in the car. He'll say the final's coming tomorrow, and 3 weeks later he's like, oh, I tweaked this and I did that and that. So working with him,
yeah,
right? How do you guys mesh? Given that desire for perfection, does that Is it additive to one another?
I've never had a problem working with Dave as far as perfectionism is concerned. I know that can be a problem from time to time. I used to be a perfectionist, and that was problematic for sure. Not anymore, thankfully. But working with Dave has always been really, really easy for, every reason you can think of. Socially, the guy is just funny as hell, right? Always laughing, always coming up with some silly story or, doing some, impression of somebody. He's a riot, So he's great. He's a great hang, and he's super smart, right? Guy can talk about anything. He can go deep. He can stay shallow. He's a great hang. But then, of course, musically, I mean, he has like just so many ideas just falling out of his head, right? And they're all great, It's like, you asshole. He's just like so full of good. He's great compositions, right? Great melodies, and really, really awesome sounds, right? I mean, he is a soundsmith for sure. And what I bring to the table, I don't know, but whatever it is, we just have a nice, simple, easygoing chemistry where it's all laughs and love. It's really just every time we get together, it's just fun, just really fun, And our musical ideas blend well enough, obviously, with Dimension Op. But there's no real conflict there. It's not like we don't disagree from time to time, but those conversations are, hey man, I love you, right? Like, yeah, what? And then, we hammer it out, and it's never tough. Never. He's the best.
I think that's great. I mean, working in groups that people are all kind of that perfection mindset and really want to have it a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
I think it goes one way or another. So you're very fortunate that it goes in a good direction with you guys. Which of all the compositions between Dimension Knot and In Continuum, do you have a favorite song out of all those?
Not really. I don't know if I could point to one that I would consider a favorite. Although there is one, and I can't remember the name of it, but I remember rehearsing for it. It was an In Continuum song. I didn't have any part in writing it, but it was such a fun song to play live that while I was rehearsing it, I was just in heaven. I just kept doing it over and over and over again. It's just such a great song. I wish I could remember what it was. If it comes to me, I'll tell you. But I think it was on the second In Continuum album. One of Dave's great songs.
Yeah, look, he's absolutely a great musician. I've bought his albums. I mean, he does great work, and it's obvious the love he puts into those. So
yeah, he really cares about what he's doing. He really does.
I think. Now, were you involved? I know he's got a new project coming out that's a reimagining of the Landlines Down on Broadway.
Right. No, I'm not part of that, but I'm sure it's going to be awesome. I mean, he's got some heavy hitters on that album, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think he has all the keyboards from the original. I'm sure he had to leverage the farm to create that museum.
Yeah, he has spent some time at the farm, and he did buy, I think, if not all, most of Tony Banks' keyboards. He's been working with Genesis for a while as like a tech guy, supplying them with some samples and sounds for their keyboards and stuff. But man, imagine being able to say, "Hey, you want to sell those?" Being able to buy them. I don't know how it happened. I don't know if he called them or they called him. In any case, he had developed enough of a relationship where that happened, and that's just nuts, man.
It is. It is. I followed the experience online. I'm like, it just. I mean, that was from the time that I think he made the purchase to the time that everything was shipped to him. It was like Christmas the whole time for him, like Christmas Day. So, one of the things that I like about what he does, and that I think is an interesting topic that I'd love to get your feedback on, is I noticed, you go back to those days when you were in your room and you had that tape recorder, and you were making those demos and trying to figure stuff out, right? And then especially I remember in the 80s and before vinyl kind of went away toward the end of the 90s, I was always the guy who loved not only the album, but I loved the single and what was on the other side, whether it was a traditional B-side that was unreleased or a demo, right? Because I always loved to pick apart, okay, how did, start, they planted a couple seeds here and it germinated into this wonderful thing. But now we live in this digital world where you kind of start and end at a very similar place, which is typically within technology. But like Dave puts out a lot of his behind the scenes, demos or different versions of tracks. Do you think we've kind of lost the art of being in a place where we're open enough to show that stuff off, right? Because you look at musicians now, they'll do 50 takes to get it right just to put out a TikTok or something, right? But if you really love music, I think that was just something special to me. How about you?
Well, yeah, I think there's something to what you're saying, but that doesn't happen. Like the desire for a demo doesn't happen until a song is, a hit, right? Like, why would you care about somebody's demo that is of a song you've never heard? I mean, maybe there's something to that. Maybe there's some energy there that, you won't get off of a polished thing, and there's some vibe there. But if you're talking about like a famous song, I would love to hear how it was, originally recorded and all the different versions of it. And I think that still happens, I mean, I've got 30 versions of some songs that, to your point, I probably wouldn't let anyone hear. But I have the demos, you know what I mean? So is your point that demos aren't made, or is it that they're not shared?
They're just not shared in the same way. I mean, you mentioned the Police earlier, and they just put out the Synchronicity box, the Synchronicity box set, 97 CDs and every rough take. I'm not wealthy enough to buy it, but I mean, it seems that bands that are putting out material today from their past are doing a lot of that, a lot of those box sets. But it just doesn't seem to be something you see very much anymore. And I kind of miss that aspect of it came from here and it ended over there, because I really think sometimes in music, unlike if you take paint and you put it on a canvas and it dries and that's your final product, I think that music is forever evolutionary.
Totally. I agree.
And to just continue to grow. So is the writing ever, are you ever done? How do you even make that choice if you've reached the point where it's good enough for the world, but then you look at someone like Sting who's had to rewrite Roxanne in 52 different ways to keep performing it and stay interested all these years.
Yeah. Do you are there demos on that compilation, The Police?
Yeah.
Are there? Cool. I'll have to check that out. Like I said, I used to listen to them almost nonstop, almost exclusively is what I mean. I don't need to listen to any more of those songs. I don't need to listen to any Police song from any of their 5 studio albums, because literally every note is here. I can just sit here and think the song. I've listened to it so many times. Of course, I still like to listen to it, but I don't have to. I really, literally do have it in my brain. Every little drum hit, every little guitar riff, everything. I zeroed into every little detail of that music. And it's in me, The big part of my my musical DNA.
I think you and I came from a place where the experience of music may be a little different than it is now. Because I totally understand that appreciation. Right? Remember, you'd invite friends over, you put an album on, and hours later you flipped it over 3 or 4 times, and you're literally each working together to pick it apart and talk about the nuances. And now music has become kind of, unless you go to a concert or some production that's using music, it's become this singular experience.
It's true.
and I kind of miss that. Like nobody gets together on the day of a release to all listen to an album. I remember, we ended up getting in trouble because I was in high school and we skipped band and we went out and got, on the day of release, we got, I think it was Invisible Touch, and we just sat there and we were listening. And then we made the mistake of pulling into the parking lot of the school and we're blasting it and got caught. But because we weren't quite as bright back then. But that experience of it being communal, it's kind of lost in a way. It's kind of sad.
Yeah, I remember that band I was talking about that I was in high school. We used to sit around our guitarist's bedroom, which is where we rehearsed. And I still remember listening to The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway like over and over and over. Just just drinking it up. It was like it was the thing you were doing. That was your activity. It wasn't just some pastime, or some music on the side. This is what we're doing. We're listening to The Lamb.
Yeah. And I think some of that has come back. I mean, I know like my niece got a record player a few months ago.
Cool.
And I've been trying to feed her record collection, but from what I understand is she'll sit there and she will listen and she'll have her friends over. And I'm like, wow, they're actually sharing something that becomes a memory. I mean, I remember the first time I ever heard Supper's Ready, and then I couldn't listen to it enough, right? And you remember the people you were with and the room you were in. It's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of something I think we've lost,
Yeah, it's hard to describe. Music is mysterious and magical, but wow, what would life be like without it?
Oh, totally. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know the promotion you did, and I know you're not, you don't constantly sit around and post on Instagram and tweet and all that other stuff, but. It's interesting. I find it interesting, and I don't know what you did around the release of the album, but I would imagine that if you choose to become a musician, having to do all of this other ancillary stuff now to be somewhat of a drag. Like,
sure.
How do you feel about that? Did you have to do some of that promotional stuff that you really didn't want to do for the album, or what did? I
did very little, and if I were to be graded on my efforts as far as promotion are concerned, I failed, total F, right? And I have my excuses, and I think some of them are sound, but most of them aren't. It is an awful part of it, but it's not like you should complain about what you need to do to be successful. You just need to do what you need to do to be successful, right? Yeah. And that's the name of the game these days, apparently. Social media, right?
Yeah, I can't imagine just having to keep it up all the time. I mean, just it's like a hamster wheel for a lot of these artists, and I can't. It takes a toll on them. I mean,
sure,
it's got to take a toll.
And the rewards are so slim. It's maddening.
Oh, I mean, I don't know if you kept up on it, but the bands that have had to, there are named bands that have had to cancel tours this summer just because people aren't going to shows the way they used to. And that's how you make the money these days.
I know. But, at the end of the day, for me, all of that is extra. What's primary is that relationship between my ears and the sounds that I create, right? I honestly could care less about anything else. I get to do this for a few hours a day and feel blissful, feel a true, honest to goodness ecstasy every day. Every day it's available to me. It happens every time I pick up the guitar or just put on some headphones or just listen to music, right? I don't need an audience. It's good to have one. It's good as an artist to share your art. But if I'm honest, my relationship with music is very, very, very personal, very singular. Like, I honestly, 99% of it is that love of that feeling. And 1% is, hey, let's see if anyone likes it.
I think that's a good for lesson for anyone who's watching who's young in music, to kind of to think about that way. I mean, music it's great therapy. It's a great way to build a relationship with yourself, and then you can choose to share it with others. But if you're doing it for the sake of your 15 minutes of fame,
right?
What do you sacrifice?
Exactly. Right. That's a good way to frame it.
Is the sacrifice worth it?
I think it's worth it for 0.001% of them. Yeah. Not to be Debbie Downer, but it's just so hard to make a buck making music anymore. You need a gimmick, And
you got to sell a lot of merch. I was at Built to Spill, and what can you do to promote? What can you do to help buy stuff? So I bought a couple shirts, right? And I think it's important that we buy the stuff, whether it's merch or the music these days, because I think it's people have gotten too used to the idea that art is free. Right. That people can continue to just do it for nothing. Right.
Yeah, that's weird. It's like, I want to, moan about the fact that I was born when guys were making shitloads of money making music. And that's when I developed my dream, right? Only to grow into a business model that is, ineffective.
yeah, and unsustainable. I mean, really unsustainable.
But I moan only in jest. Like I said, it's the music, the relationship itself is what it's all about.
If you brought up the Police, we really haven't talked about a lot of your influences, but although they're very apparent in your music, if you had an opportunity to go in a studio with one musician and just brainstorm and create for a day, who would it be and why?
Good question. Probably Peter Gabriel. I say probably. It would definitely be Peter Gabriel. He's such a huge influence on me, and I just think his music he creates something that's just, a step above a song. It's not just a song. It's otherworldly. It's spiritual. I don't want to get all hokey, but his music it's got a depth to it. It really just reaches in, It's there's something really unique about him. I don't know if I can put my finger on it, but it's almost like his music just comes from a deeper place than almost anyone else, And I say that about his music. Like, I'm not even talking about his lyrics, which I know are deep, but I'm not a lyric guy, I don't even know the lyrics to some of my favorite songs. I love melody. I love chord changes. I love rhythm. I love to be, surprised. I like the unexpected, so long as it resolves in a pleasant way. I don't like abstract, weird shit just to be weird. It's got to feel good. It's got to feel nice. It's got to be, welcoming. And I don't know, the way he approaches songwriting, it just really does seem like he's approaching it from a different dimension somehow. Yeah, I would love to be in a studio with him, ask him about his influences, what, his process is. I would just talk with him all day. If we could actually pick up some instruments and play and record, oh my God.
Well, you'd be fortunate, because I ask this question all the time, but you'd be fortunate because his writing process is so slow, you'd probably get more than one day out of it, the experience.
Oh, cool. Right on.
Because he sets world records for time between releases. And it's interesting you brought up liking chord changes. So I would say that given the description that you just gave, not much of a Philip Glass fan.
Yeah, I've had some exposure to Philip Glass, and anytime I hear him, it's wonderful. But I don't think I've ever sought that out. I've never bought an album so I don't have much expertise. But yeah, I like it.
It's definitely interesting. I first learned of him. What were they? I think it was playing a Swati. He did 3 movies. And they were all silent except for his soundtrack, and it was all very industrialized. It's very interesting.
Okay, that's cool.
That's what a degree in filmmaking gets you. I see that there's it looks like a violin player over your shoulder. Who is that?
Oh, I'm working on a animated 3D animated character. His name is Fid, and he is an alien from the planet Xanthar, and he, as part of SIFE, the Secret Intergalactic Federation of Explorers, which is kind of like a student exchange program for different worlds, his assignment was Earth. And he came to Earth, and he was here for about 5 years, and he fell in love with Earth, studying Earthlings of all kinds, but especially the humans. He fell in love with the humans most of all, and one in particular, but that's another story. But what he loves so much about it is the billions of ways that humans have invented to entertain themselves. And so he, starting in October, will, on his TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, X, and YouTube, is going to be sharing, like everyone else, videos of him hitting a baseball, shooting a basketball, playing violin, playing piano, skiing, bowling, right? Just 1,000 different ways of entertaining yourself. And he's just gonna, he's put a camera on himself, and he's gonna share it like everyone else does.
That's really creative. I like that. Now we have something to look forward to in October, right? So definitely,
right.
And you said what's the easiest way to find him once he's out there?
Well, you can go to. I'm just putting all the social media pages together right now. See if I can figure this out. Go to. All right, I'll give you the x.com/fidsigma. That's my Twitter. x.com/fidsigma. THIDSIGMA. That's his last name.
You send me his different socials. We'll make sure they're in the description of the video for sure.
Perfect.
So we'll draw people there. Just to get back to one thing, kind of before we kind of put a pin in everything. Mm-hmm. I love sharing, right? Like different either influences or things that people I'm listening to these days, things like that. I'm a big believer, and I say it all the time, go out and purchase music. So everybody watching, there'll be a link below, and I'm sure you can get it digitally, or maybe an actual, if you're one of those people who loves a good CD, a copy of Let Go. You can thank me later. It's really good. I will tell you that if you put it on for a workout, it's paced very well for a workout. I work out to it a couple times a week, so it's got a great pace to it. So definitely worth buying. But who are some artists, musicians that you're currently kind of having a little bit of an earworm for, and why do you like them? I enjoy sharing the other artists.
One guy who is might not be on everyone's radar, although he should be, and it wouldn't surprise me if your audience already knew about this guy. His name is Jacob Collier, and he's this mid-20s English kid who just grew up in a room full of instruments, like me on steroids. Like he had everything, and his aptitude for music is it's about as natural as anything you've ever seen. He gets music on a level I don't think I've ever witnessed. He's extraordinary, right? He really is. Go check him out. I can't say enough about him. He's I don't know, pop, jazz. You know, he just does a bunch of different stuff, and he has so many influences. And you know, and again, it comes down to how it makes you feel. His music makes you feel. It's advanced, but it really, really makes you feel like deep. Like check him out. He's awesome.
I will do that for sure. And everyone else, check him out as well after you purchase a copy of Let Go.
Yeah. Or before. Just make sure you buy a copy.
Buy a copy of Let Go. So we can, you know, Matt can finance the second album. Any chance of that happening?
Well, honestly, we're considering re-releasing the first. We're in talks right now with somebody that may re-release the first, and then, you know, we'll sign for a second. But that's all just talk right now. So we'll see. Hey, everything starts out with talking, just like this. It was great. It was great to hang. Yeah, man, for sure. Learn a lot. I appreciate you joining me and joining us here on The Hang. It's been a lot of fun. Everybody, please, you know, share these videos, especially if you're one of those, you know, even if whether you're a prog fan or a closet prog fan who got into Sound of Contact, you just learned a few things today. So definitely worth spreading the news about Matt here and what he's up to these days. So subscribe, share. We have to do our social media thing too. Matt, it's been great. Thanks so much for joining me. My pleasure. Seriously, thank you.
Thank you.